Guess what? 7:10 in the a.m. You are listening to the Cannadelic Podcast. My name is Pete, or Peter. I like Pete. Only certain people call me Peter. My name is Pete. We're here. Cannadelic Podcast. Friday. Finally made it. 7:10 a.m. If you're joining me live, kudos to you for being up and about on Friday morning. I'm excited for the weekend. I'm excited to spend first full weekend as a married couple this weekend. It's excited for that. But you know what's really exciting? What's really exciting is how cannabis is being legalized. Every single day, there's more and more movement. And we are in 2022, and we have one of the, we are on the cusp of legalization in the United States and ultimately the world. And I don't know necessarily, I lose track. I don't know who's legal and who's not anymore, and to what degree that they're legal. Do you guys remember who's legal and who's not? I mean, I know now New Jersey is, because I was just over there, and then April 21st, they started recreational sales. I know that New York is legal because if you look at pictures of Washington Square Park, one of the go-to places to buy weed or fake weed when you're a kid in the early 90s in New York, full of people smoking and videoing. Everybody's videoing. I think that's kind of hilarious. Steve D'Angelo from Harborside was down there. So marijuana legalization is everywhere. Three quarters of the U.S. states, 75% have legalized marijuana to some extent. And last year, recreational hit $15 billion and it's on target to pass $25 billion by 2025. $15 billion in marijuana. It's kind of a lot. And, you know, the government is not going to sit around for that long and not take their piece of that kind of revenue. So the state governments have been earning their piece of that kind of revenue, but now the federal government, when they legalize, is going to want some of that as well. So in the Senate, having passed the House already is the MORE Act, Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, which would legalize cannabis on the federal level and expunge the records of nonviolent offenders, as well as it would fund social and criminal justice programs in communities most impacted by over-policing. Really interesting, because that's kind of subjective. Who is most impacted by over-policing? What does that mean to fund social and criminal justice programs? All of that stuff can kind of tends to get muddy for me. But the MORE Act did clear the House, and it is now in front of the Senate. And if the Senate approves it, it will go to President Biden to sign. And the MORE Act would deschedule cannabis. It would take cannabis off of the Controlled Substances Act. So our list of controlled substances are interesting. I don't know how to look at that. To me, it just looks like these are the ones that we can make money off of. These are the ones that we use to demonize people. Because don't forget, cannabis, even heroin, and psychedelics are Schedule I drugs, which mean that they have no medicinal value. Opioids, heroin, has no medicinal value. Well, I think there's some pharmaceutical companies that would beg to differ with that. LSD and cannabis were scheduled, and this is admitted, because they were targeting Black and brown communities and the anti-war movement. That's why they're on that schedule list. It's just mind-boggling how, at least to me, how politics play out right in front of us. And we can see the corruption, and we can see things that happen like right in front of our face. And it's like you're screaming into the wind, and there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, I thought that some of these things were at least hidden, you know, like they they were behind the scenes and they didn't talk about them. But when they actually come out and say, this is why we did these things. And I've seen politics in the past couple of years really be really upfront about, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. Well, I'm not going to pass this unless you pass this. We've even seen it in the marijuana industry. People saying that they're not going to vote for marijuana unless another politician votes for something in their favor. And that stuff used to be, I think, under the table. Now it's like just right out in front of you. That's why I don't get into politics. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about which states have legalized marijuana. Okay. So I got a map for you. I'm going to put the map up here so you can look at this. Map is from Rolling Stone. I believe it is the most updated map because it has New Jersey on there, which just legalized. So I'm going to go with that. But we're going to start with medical. As of April 2022, 37 states have legalized the medical use of cannabis. We're going to go in alphabetical order. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere. I've been Alaska, Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, couldn't get it. No, that doesn't rhyme. Huh. Alaska, Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas or Arkansas, however you prefer, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Hawaii, Illinois or Illinois, both of them, Louisiana, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Dakota, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Washington, and West Virginia. That is a lot of states. D.C. and Puerto Rico and Guam and the U.S. Virgin Islands have all also legalized medical marijuana. So medical is pretty widespread. Each of those jurisdictions has their own criteria, right? So it's a lot easier to get medical marijuana in Florida than it is in Mississippi, right? Or South Dakota, where they're still fighting over this stuff. But what states have legalized recreational or adult use or just not criminalized cannabis? It's recreational is such an interesting term. Like recreation isn't medical, first of all, and it has this connotation like, hey, we're just doing this for fun. You know, it's like, is there recreational alcohol? Because I know it has medicinal benefit. Anyway, so which states have legalized recreational marijuana? According to the National Conference of State Legislatures, 18 states have legalized adult use of marijuana for recreational purposes. Those include, you might hear some overlap, Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Nevada, Oregon, Vermont, Virginia, and Washington. Washington, as we talked about yesterday, is changing all of their legal language from marijuana to cannabis, which is interesting. I'm hoping to see if that makes any difference, because how we refer to things does matter. Washington, D.C., Guam, and the Northern Mariana Islands also have recreationally legal cannabis. Rhode Island introduced legislation for adult use in March of 2022. I'm not sure what the status is of that. We can probably find out. Let's see. Oh, no, hasn't moved. So, as with anything in politics, hasn't moved. South Dakota last year, the state Supreme Court struck down an amendment to the state constitution to legalize recreational cannabis that voters passed with a 54% majority in 2020. This is a really big deal because I can't remember the governor's name. I think it might be Kathy Hochul. Correct me if I'm wrong. But they have been against the legalization of cannabis from the beginning, and thwarting the will of the people is like such a big deal to me. I don't see how a lot of these, populist governors and candidates that are, populist, basically, for the people, can thwart the will of the people like that and still get support. 54% is a majority. I mean, I think so, unless you're in Florida. If you're in Florida, you need 60% for a majority. So under that Controlled Substances Act, 1970 Controlled Substances Act, the DEA still classifies cannabis as Schedule 1 drug with no currently accepted medical use and high potential for abuse. High potential for abuse. Well, they're right about that when it comes to opioids. There is a high potential for abuse. I think there are some lawsuits that are being settled because of that too, because they played down that potential for abuse. So you look at things that, the way the laws are created in order to benefit some and not benefit others. Look, it's a big problem, and I think it comes down to, money in politics and influence in politics and revolving doors, and it goes on in every industry. I did extensive research on the food industry and the FDA and the USDA, even the American Heart Association, and all very closely tied to big food companies and big agriculture and things that are kind of the cornerstone of our economy. So if you look at the food pyramid, for instance, before the food pyramid came out, which I believe was the 1980 or late 70s, that food pyramid has the oils at the top and has the breads at the bottom, right? The meats are close to the top as well. Well, the U.S. Agricultural industry, the wheat growers, corn growers, were highly influential when it came to the development of that food pyramid. And you see the onset of breakfast cereal replacing breakfast, like bacon and eggs and things like that. People were eating in the 70s and 60s more so, but when it got to the late 70s and the early 80s, cereal became this huge push. And then you had guidelines for advertising them. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember part of this complete breakfast. Do you remember cereal commercials that say part of this complete breakfast? And they show you a meal with cereal and like this crazy breakfast with like orange juice and toast and bacon and like all sorts of stuff on this table. And the reason they do that is not because they want you to look at this great, awesome breakfast. It's because legally they can't tell you that cereal is a healthy breakfast. They can't tell you that cereal is good for you for breakfast, or is that it's a good breakfast. I'm not lying. They have to show you it's part of a complete breakfast, meaning that it's an incomplete breakfast. Yet everyone eats cereal on its own. I said it's fortified with lots of vitamins and minerals and stuff like that. It's probably not the worst thing for a society that's not getting those things. But who's to say we weren't getting those things? I don't know if you guys watch Cheech and Chong, but you go back to the 70s and some of these Cheech and Chong movies, people are eating these huge burgers, bacon. Nobody knew anything about, gyms at the time, right? Gyms were like kind of new, like it was like for meatheads and bodybuilders and stuff like that. There wasn't really Jack LaLanne just yet. It started to get more popular in the 80s. People were rail thin. People were really skinny. Like you look at any footage from the 70s, doesn't matter where it is, California, New York, anywhere. Everybody's like super skinny. I mean, I get it was the style, but all these people weren't starving themselves, so and that's what corruption can lead to. An entire population is unhealthy. An entire population suffers with type 2 diabetes, something that's completely preventable and completely caused by overeating and eating the wrong things. And that is the kind of detriment that can happen. And what we're all trying to avoid in cannabis legalization. I don't like that same model. I don't like the corruption. I would like to see more small producers. If it starts to mimic the food model, it's going to be like low cost versus high quality. So you can go and buy food, like organic food from a collective, from a CSA, where people actually grow it from local farms. I used to try doing a lot of that stuff. It's really hard. It's expensive. That's time consuming. So hopefully we can learn from that. And I have my fingers crossed because I don't have a lot of hope. But as we near legalization on this federal level, it's really important to keep an eye on who's pushing for what and why. And in New Jersey, we've seen they legalized. They may have legalized a little bit early and given the big MSOs a really big upper hand in the state, and really locked out a lot of competition. So as we look at legalization, it becomes a little bit more gray. It's not just black and white. Can we legalize? Do we legalize? I'm the first person to admit, when we were pushing for Amendment 2, I was like, let's get something passed. Just anything. Let's get something passed, and then we'll figure it out later. It might not be the best course of action. So it's something to think about as we're, moving forward with legalization efforts, whether that be on the state level or the federal level. Doesn't matter. Just something to be cognizant of. Yes, I'm gonna run over to the comments over here. Say hello, Chris Lutz. Hello, Froggy. Hope you're doing really well. Ti, what's up? High class Carrie. Thank you for commenting on my shirt. I love it. It's a birthday present. It's actually a Rush shirt, but it's for the beer. You can't see it, but Rush came out with like a beer, and at the bottom it has like all the beer stuff. It's pretty cool. Let's see who else is over here in the comments. Carrie, Elijah, Nina, Chuck. What's up, Chuck? Tracy, Ann, Glenn, Marvin, 007, Z John. Thank you guys for joining this morning. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And maybe next week we'll talk a little bit about home grow, which could be the solution to a lot of this stuff. If people are allowed to, and it's easier to grow your own plants. We make the comparison to the food, right? So we make a comparison. Well, people can grow their own tomatoes, but they still shop at the store. Yeah, but you're not growing a lot of tomatoes. People can grow their own lettuce too, but like, how many salads are you getting out of that? Not a whole lot. Whereas cannabis, you grow 2 or 3 plants, you're good for a while. You can get like a couple of pounds out of that, and you're good for a few months. The downside of that is it's not as easy as growing tomatoes. And if you eat a rotten one, you get sick for a little bit and that's it. But if you smoke a pound of moldy cannabis, you're going to have some health issues. So there's some things to talk about when it comes to home grow, whether that be regulation or just education and best practices and things like that. It could be a solution to this equity issue, but we shall see. You might have seen the new scroll down here. Cannadelic EDU at FIU is July 9th and 10th. You can go to cannadelic.miami, cannadelic.miami for tickets and details. We have a lot of really cool speakers coming in from out of town. This is going to be a fantastic event. We have vendors and sponsors signing on daily, and it's going to be, I couldn't predict what the last Cannadelic would be. I can't predict what this Cannadelic is going to be. It's brand new kind of thing on a campus. We have students. We have a lot of academics coming to talk, people that are, professors, people from Johns Hopkins and things. So I'm super excited for it, and I'm hoping that you all can make it out. Again, go to cannadelic.miami. Tickets, details, sponsorship opportunities, all that good stuff. And hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. Peace out.